Bug out bag shelter options, where most people start and where most people end. Hey, my friends, thanks for checking the video out. We're going to kind of just explore this topic, and this video really is for the beginners to kind of get a big picture view so that they might possibly skip a few of these steps or stages in the progression of shelter options in their bug out bag. It's very normal and natural for people to kind of try different systems out. And but there's a reason why the more advanced people are using a certain system over others, because, well, they've tried things too, and this is what typically people settle on. So let's go through the progression. Most amateurs will start out with, and I did this too, so I mean, not pointing fingers, and of course, you know, all of these have pros and cons. It's not like these are like all, you know, when you start out with some of these, like the worst things ever. I mean, I think the worst thing ever is not to even have a shelter, you know? So this is better than nothing. But people start out with the tube tents or the mylar tents. But they realize after they practice putting them up a few times that, wow, they're not very durable. You know, these tube tents, I mean, the material is sometimes thinner than like a lot of garbage bags. I mean, I've seen them at least that are really like ridiculously thin, and it doesn't take nothing to rip them. And the mylar tents are in some ways worse because, you know, you have a twig and that accidentally pushes against it, it'll puncture them. I mean, some of those are just like extremely thin as well. So, you know, with both of these systems, you want to have a nice roll of duct tape so you can constantly, you know, patch these things up. But if you got some high winds or heavy rain or, God forbid, a hailstorm, these systems will probably shred. I mean, shred right, you know, right in front of you. Or if you're in them, you're going to be in trouble, you know. So definitely have some type of poncho to get into. The next progression, though, for people, once they realize that this system probably isn't going to be best for them and their family, is to go into some type of like tent system. A lot of them start out with a 3-season tent, and because they don't really know anything about tents, they don't really know to get a 4-season, and they don't know that there's different types of tents, and some of them are heavier than others and so forth. So a lot of them get a 3-season tent, and they weigh anywhere from like 6 to 10 pounds. And it's like these behemoths. And, you know, some of them are pretty smart about how they deal with the weight. They kind of divide it up among other people's bags. Like they'll put like maybe a third in this bag, a third in that, and a third in that. And they'll take like a 10-pound tent and make it like a 3.5-pound ordeal for each person, which isn't that bad. But it's just the whole point, though, that, you know, we have a lot of other things that we're carrying with us in our bug out bags. And if we can reduce that weight, it helps everyone. And so during the wintertime, when they practice their bugging out, they realize that their 3-season tent really isn't ideal at all. I mean, that's why they make 4-season tents for wintertime. And they kind of want to upgrade. Some of them do, and then others, they kind of just figure out how to insulate or reinforce their 3-season tent to possibly push through in their area through winter. But after a while, people get tired of the weight and the bulk and just the hassle of setting up tents. Some tents are much more laborious than others. And so they kind of learn and kind of discover, if you really want to say it, tarp systems. And like anything else, a lot of people are not really familiar with all the different types of tarps that are available. A lot of people think of tarps and they think of like a hardware store or a big box store or like Harbor Freight, for example, that sells like basically just tarps to cover, you know, like firewood outside, or to cover your lawnmower or something. And they have them typically that are like 4, 5, even 9 millimeter in thickness. Walmart actually has one that's like their new Sportsman, you know, type of line of tarps, and they're like 10 millimeters. That's pretty thick. But what I'm saying here is simply that you don't need 4, 5, 9, or 10 millimeter tarps. It's pretty much overkill if you get a good quality material. And so people eventually will discover sill nylon. And once you discover that, there's no turning back. I mean, it's just like love at first sight. And you just you just can't help but to be like, man, this is good stuff. And just make sure it has good grommets and it's sewn well and everything, and you're good to go. It'll cost a little bit up front, but man, it'll last, and it'll be so small and in format, so easy to carry because it's so lightweight. And so people learn how to make shelters with a good quality sil nylon tarp. But over time, people realize that, well, the tarp is great, but I don't like being on the ground. I need to get off the ground. Because the ground can really pull heat from your body. Even if you have like a good sleep system and you have some insulation, it's still really ideal to get off the ground. And so people discover the hammock systems. There's different types of hammocks. There's open hammocks. There's hammocks that have like mosquito netting. I got one of those, and those are awesome. And then there's like hammocks that are more like closed systems. So you kind of get into them and they kind of have their own like hooded top, like a little shelter. Those are all good in different environments. Where I am personally is the hammock in conjunction with the good quality sil nylon tarp. So I put the sil nylon tarp over the hammock as an extra redundancy. Even if I use one of my hammocks that are a closed system, I still like to have extra protection above me, just in case if there's like a really bad hailstorm or heavy rain, or if there's like some really bad wind that, some, cold wind coming through, it can kind of help block some of that. And so, this is the progression. And so there are some people that eventually go full on with hammocks and no tarps. But for me, the compromise and where I'm at personally is tarps and hammocks together. But if you go the next step and you say, okay, I just figured out how to kind of just carry just a hammock and nothing else, you'll learn how to insulate it, and there's a lot of things that can go with that. Now, there is one even step beyond that, and that is more of like the advanced bushcraft kind of guy, the bushcrafters. Those people rely on a lot of skills to build a shelter right then and there. That's a little risky because in some environments, you may not have a lot of time to build a shelter from whatever's around. But a lot of those individuals, they do carry like a poncho tarp system. So for all the newbies, that's something that really is a great piece of kit. The only problem with a lot of those poncho tarps is they kind of typically come in a very heavy, thick material, and they can be kind of bulky because of it and a little heavy. But if you look really, really hard, you can find some lighter weight options. But yeah, they typically have like a poncho or a poncho tarp, the advanced people, and they build shelters. I don't know if I'll ever get to that level because I'm a little bit lazy, and I know some of the skills for sure to do that. I'm not, not aware of how to build like a debris shelter and so forth, but I kind of choose not to do it because I just don't want to do it. And so for me, it's a lot more comfortable to use a tarp and a hammock. But you have to explore, what works best in your environment. Like, for example, I think a tarp system works really well in warmer climates, and so well that you may not even need a hammock, But there are some jungle environments that are, it can be very warm, but because of the things on the ground that are moving around that could bite you and stuff, well, you may want to get off the ground, So in that environment, maybe no tarp, but definitely a hammock. So you kind of have to just kind of figure this all out. But I just wanted to kind of outline this because a lot of people just are completely oblivious to some options. And there are other options actually than this, but these are this kind of like the mainstream ones that people go through and settle on eventually, typically speaking. So this is the Bug Out Bag Shelter Options video. Let me know what you think about it. Thanks for watching.